All right, so we've got this mountain of information here about Snowflake Inc. 10 Qs, even some legal agreements. Looks like someone's really trying to get a handle on this company, beyond just the headlines.
Yeah, this is definitely where the deeper insights are, digging into these documents. We'll be able to really get a sense of not just what Snowflake is, but how they operate their strategies, the challenges they face.
Exactly. So why don't we start by unpacking, they're offering this data cloud concept that they seem to emphasize so much. The 10K describes it as a network for data collaboration and value extraction. But I got to be honest, that's a little bit vague for me.
It does sound like something you'd see in a, corporate brochure.
Yeah.
But if we break it down, what Snowflake is essentially doing is building a platform where businesses can pool all their data together,
Okay.
no matter, how messy or how massive it is, and then they can extract meaningful insights from it.
So instead of having data siloed in different departments with different formats, Snowflake brings it all together.
That's right. It's not just about storage, though. They provide the tools to actually analyze that data, to find hidden patterns, and to ultimately use it to drive better decision-making.
We're not just talking about basic analytics here, though. The 10K mentions some pretty advanced use cases like AI and machine learning.
Absolutely. And one specific example that really stuck with me was their work with financial institutions.
Oh, yeah.
The 10K highlights how Snowflake's platform is being used to detect fraud in real time
Wow.
by analyzing these massive transaction data sets, which is something that traditional systems, just couldn't handle effectively.
That's a great example of how Snowflake is going beyond just consolidating data. They're actually enabling entirely new possibilities. And speaking of possibilities, the 10K boasts a customer list that includes almost 70% of the Forbes Global 2000.
It's a staggering statistic. It tells us they're not just targeting, small businesses. They're aiming for the enterprise level, and they're clearly succeeding.
But with that kind of growth comes scrutiny, right? The 10K also reveals some potential vulnerabilities, particularly their heavy reliance on public cloud providers like AWS and Azure.
That definitely jumped out at me, too. You know what happens if one of those providers has a major outage, or if they significantly change their pricing model? It could have a ripple effect on Snowflake's entire business.
It's almost like building a house on someone else's land. You're dependent on their stability and their goodwill.
Exactly. But to their credit, Snowflake does have a multi-cloud strategy, meaning they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Okay, so they're diversifying their risk, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
smart, but it also adds complexity to their operations, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Managing a multi-cloud environment can be a real challenge. It requires specialized expertise, careful coordination. It really begs the question, can they maintain this agility as they continue to scale?
That's a point worth pondering. Now let's move from the technical side to the numbers. The reports are packed with impressive growth metrics, over 9,000 customers, triple-digit revenue growth, and that eye-popping net revenue retention rate of 131%.
Yeah, that retention rate is particularly noteworthy.
Yeah.
In the SaaS world, anything above 100% is considered excellent.
Right.
But 131% suggests something more. It suggests a level of customer satisfaction and product stickiness that's really quite rare.
It implies that customers aren't just staying, they're actually expanding their usage of Snowflake.
Exactly. And it often indicates, successful upselling and cross-selling, which are key drivers of long-term revenue growth. This could be a sign that Snowflake is becoming indispensable to its customers' data strategies.
But impressive growth doesn't always translate to profitability, right? Especially for a company that's investing so heavily in R&D and global expansion.
That's true. Snowflake is still in a growth phase. They're prioritizing market share over short-term profits. And their reliance on this consumption-based pricing model means that their costs scale directly with revenue.
So as their customer base grows and consumes more data, their infrastructure costs rise as well.
Precisely. And this model, while it offers flexibility for customers, also introduces a level of volatility into Snowflake's financials.
So investors are essentially betting on Snowflake's ability to achieve significant scale,
Right.
where those margins widen and profitability becomes sustainable.
That's the long-term play. But it also makes understanding their financial statements even more critical. We need to look beyond just the headline numbers.
Okay.
We need to analyze the underlying trends, the potential risks.
Which is exactly what we're here to do. Let's move beyond the basics and start digging into those details, shall we?
Absolutely. I think some of the most interesting insights lie in the finer points, the nuances that often get overlooked.
Let's start with their global expansion strategy. The 10Q highlights some interesting moves, particularly their entry into the Chinese market.
Yeah, that immediately caught my eye as well. China represents a massive potential market, But it also comes with some unique challenges, regulatory hurdles, data sovereignty issues,
Mm.
and the need to navigate a complex political landscape.
They even mentioned needing a Chinese operating partner in the 10Q.
Hmm.
That suggests a level of compromise and potential loss of control that's not typical for Snowflake.
It's a high-risk, high-reward gamble.
Right.
They're essentially weighing the potential for massive growth against the complexities of operating in such a tightly controlled environment.
It's a fascinating strategic decision.
Yeah.
And it raises questions about how they'll balance their global ambitions with the need to adapt to local regulations and cultural
And
norms.
this isn't just about China.
Right.
This is a theme that runs through their entire global strategy.
Mm.
The documents mention specific legal and regulatory considerations in various countries, from data privacy laws in Europe to restrictions on cross-border data flows.
It seems like they're walking a tightrope trying to maintain a unified platform while also complying with this patchwork of global regulations.
And that's where things get really interesting. How can they maintain that delicate balance? What are the potential pitfalls? And what does it all mean for their long-term growth prospects?
Those are exactly the questions we'll be exploring as we continue our deep dive.
Hmm.
So let's move beyond the surface and start uncovering those hidden gems, shall we?
Let's do it. I'm eager to see what else we can uncover from these reports.
So we've talked about, Snowflake's global ambitions and the balancing act they face as they expand into all these new markets. But I want to shift gears for a moment and dig into something that often gets overlooked when we're analyzing a company: employee dynamics and corporate culture.
Ah, yes, the human element.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the numbers, the technology, but ultimately it's people who drive a company's success.
Right. And the 10K actually dedicates a significant portion to discussing the risks associated with, talent acquisition and retention. They even highlight a specific anecdote: the recent transition from Frank Slootman to Sridhar Ramaswamy as CEO.
Yeah, that transition definitely caught my attention as well. It seemed like a pretty smooth handover on the surface. But the 10K reveals some of the underlying challenges. They acknowledge the intense competition for top engineering talent, the difficulty of maintaining a cohesive culture during these periods of rapid growth.
So even with all this impressive performance, they're not immune to internal pressures and vulnerabilities.
Right. And it's not just about attracting new talent. It's about keeping your existing employees, engaged and motivated.
Especially in a tech environment where stock-based compensation is such a significant part of the package. The 10K mentions potential concerns about employee morale if the stock price were to experience, a prolonged downturn.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even the most successful companies are vulnerable to these human factors.
For sure. And this ties back to that broader theme of risk management. How is Snowflake addressing these internal challenges?
Well, the 10K outlines several initiatives: leadership development programs, mentorship opportunities, a focus on creating a diverse and inclusive work environment. It seems like they're taking a proactive approach to building a strong internal culture, but only time will tell how effective these efforts will be.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to build a sense of community and shared purpose within this rapidly expanding organization. But let's move from the qualitative aspects of culture to something a bit more concrete. There's a detail buried in the RSU agreement that I found particularly intriguing.
Okay.
It's called a clawback provision.
Ah, yes, the clawback provision.
Yeah.
Not something you see every day, but it speaks volumes about their approach to corporate governance.
Gotcha.
Essentially, it gives them the ability to recoup executive compensation under certain circumstances.
So if there's a financial restatement or evidence of misconduct, they can essentially demand that executives return a portion of their compensation. It seems like a pretty strong signal that they're prioritizing accountability.
Absolutely. It's a mechanism to deter, unethical behavior and to align executive incentives with the long-term interests of the company and its shareholders.
But wouldn't that also make executives more risk-averse, potentially stifling innovation?
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
And the impact of these types of provisions is still being debated. Some argue they create a culture of fear, while others believe they promote, responsible leadership. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out at Snowflake, especially in such a dynamic and rapidly evolving industry.
Yeah, it's a reminder that corporate governance isn't just about rules and regulations. It's about shaping behavior and setting a tone at the top. But let's step back from the internal dynamics for a bit and take a look at a key aspect of Snowflake's business model: their consumption-based pricing structure.
Yeah, that's a fascinating aspect that really sets them apart from traditional software companies. Instead of charging fixed subscription fees, they charge customers based on the amount of data they store and the compute power they use.
It's like paying for utilities. You only get billed for what you actually consume.
Exactly. And this model offers customers a lot of flexibility. They can scale their usage up or down as needed without being locked into these long-term contracts.
Yeah, it seems particularly well suited to the cloud environment where agility and scalability are so paramount. But the 10K also points out some potential drawbacks to this model.
Of course, there are two sides to every coin.
Hmm.
For Snowflake, the primary challenge is the inherent unpredictability of revenue.
Okay.
Their earnings are directly tied to customer consumption, which can fluctuate significantly from quarter to quarter.
So while they can boast these impressive growth numbers, there's also a higher degree of volatility in their financial performance.
That's right. And this is something investors need to be aware of. Snowflake's success hinges on their ability to accurately forecast customer usage patterns and manage their infrastructure costs accordingly.
It's like trying to predict the weather. There are always going to be some unexpected fluctuations.
Exactly. And that's where their sophisticated financial planning and analytics capabilities come into play. They need to be able to anticipate those swings in demand and adjust their resources accordingly.
It seems like they're walking a tightrope trying to balance customer flexibility with predictable financial performance. But let's shift our focus to something that's becoming increasingly important for investors and customers alike: corporate social responsibility.
It's a topic that's gaining momentum across all industries, and the tech sector is no exception. Stakeholders want to know that companies are considering their impact, on the environment, on society, the ethical implications of their technology.
And while the 10Ks and 10Qs don't have a dedicated section on CSR, there are some interesting details scattered throughout the documents. They mention commitments to sustainability, diversity and inclusion, ethical data practices.
Right. They highlight their efforts to reduce their carbon footprint, promote a diverse workforce, ensure the responsible use of data. But it's important to note that these are mostly high-level statements.
Okay, so we're getting a sense of their intentions, but we need to look beyond the words and examine their actions. Are they setting measurable goals? Are they implementing concrete programs? Are they holding themselves accountable for progress?
Those are the critical questions. It's easy to talk about values,
Mhm.
but the real test is how those values are reflected in a company's operations and decision-making.
And that's something we'll be keeping in mind as we continue our deep dive. We need to assess whether Snowflake is walking the walk, not just talking the talk. But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture here. We've uncovered a lot of granular details about Snowflake, but what does it all mean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've seen the impressive growth, the innovative technology, the strategic bets, but also the potential vulnerabilities. We need to step back and consider how all these pieces fit together.
We've examined their reliance on public cloud providers, their global expansion strategy, their internal culture, and even their approach to corporate social responsibility. But there's one crucial element we haven't fully explored yet: their financial performance.
Whew. Yes, the heart of the matter. We could talk about all these other aspects, but ultimately, investors want to know one thing. Can Snowflake deliver consistent and profitable growth?
And that's what we'll be dissecting in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into their key financial metrics, their profitability trends, their overall financial health.
We'll separate the signal from the noise and help you understand what these numbers really mean for Snowflake's future.
All right, so we've explored, Snowflake's technology, their global reach, even their internal culture, and those commitments to social responsibility. But now it's time to tackle the core of, what makes any business tick: their financial performance.
And it's not just about the raw numbers, right? We need to really decipher what these figures reveal about Snowflake's overall health, their strategic choices, and ultimately their potential for long-term success.
Right, because impressive growth figures don't always tell the whole story. So let's start with that, top line number. Everyone focuses on revenue. Snowflake has been boasting triple-digit growth for several quarters now. Is that pace sustainable?
That is the key question. And I think the 10 Qs offer some clues. Their revenue surge seems to be fueled by a combination of factors: a rapidly expanding customer base, those sky-high net revenue retention rates we discussed, and the increasing consumption of their platform, as existing customers scale their usage.
Yeah, we talked about earlier that impressive 131% net revenue retention rate. It suggests that customers aren't just sticking around, they're actually spending significantly more over time.
Yeah, it's a powerful indicator. It tells us their platform is sticky, meaning once customers integrate Snowflake into their data operations, they're likely to deepen that relationship. It could be a sign that, Snowflake is becoming increasingly essential to how their customers operate.
But those impressive revenue figures don't automatically translate into profits. especially for a company like Snowflake that's pouring resources into R&D, global expansion, and building out, their sales and marketing teams.
Absolutely, and that's evident in their current financial statements.
Right.
They're not yet GAAP profitable, which isn't unusual for a company in a rapid growth phase,
Mm.
but the 10Qs do show improving gross margins, which is a positive sign.
Okay, so the cost of providing their platform relative to the revenue they're generating is trending in the right direction. But as we discussed earlier, their reliance on a consumption-based pricing model introduces some inherent volatility.
Exactly. Their infrastructure costs scale directly with their revenue. So as their customer base grows and data consumption increases, so do their expenses.
Right.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It's almost as if they're on this treadmill. They have to maintain this rapid pace of growth just to stay ahead of those rising
And
costs.
that's where the real test of their management team comes in. Can they navigate this growth phase while also laying the groundwork for sustainable profitability?
Right. The 10 Qs point to some key strategies they're employing. They're focused on driving operating leverage, meaning they're striving to increase revenue at a faster pace than their expenses.
It's about finding efficiencies as they scale, optimizing their operations and making smart investments that will yield long-term returns.
They're also making strategic bets on areas they believe will drive future profitability, things like AI data sharing and building out a robust developer ecosystem.
It's a long-term vision, and it'll take time to see if these bets pay off. But it speaks to their ambition and their understanding that simply maintaining the status quo won't be enough to achieve lasting success.
Now let's talk about the lifeblood of any company, especially one in a growth phase, cash flow. The 10 Qs show that Snowflake has been generating strong operating cash flow, even though they're not yet JAP profitable.
That's a critical point. It suggests that their business model is inherently cash generative. Customers are paying upfront for consumption, which provides a healthy cash cushion.
And that cash flow is being used strategically. They're investing in R&D, expanding internationally, making acquisitions, and even buying back some of their own stock.
It's a balancing act, allocating that cash flow between driving further growth and demonstrating confidence to investors.
Mm.
It seems like they're striking a balance between those priorities.
So we've dissected revenue profitability and cash flow. What's the overall assessment of Snowflake's financial health?
From my perspective, they're in a remarkably strong position. They're a high-growth company generating significant cash flow, and they seem to be making smart investments to secure their future.
But as we've discussed, they're not without their challenges. Intense competition, evolving regulations, the inherent volatility of their business model, these are all factors investors need to consider carefully.
And it's why deep dives like this are so crucial. We need to look beyond the headlines and understand the nuances of their financial performance, the potential risks, the strategic decisions that are shaping their trajectory.
It's been an incredible journey through these reports. We started with this stack of documents, and now we have this much deeper understanding of what makes Snowflake tick, their technology, their global strategy, their internal dynamics, and of course, their financial performance.
And that's the beauty of these deep dives.
Yeah.
We peel back the layers, uncover those hidden gems, and emerge with a more informed perspective.
So for our listener who's taken this deep dive with us, what's the key takeaway?
I'd say this. Snowflake is undoubtedly a company with a bold vision, a strong track record, and a compelling financial profile. They're not simply riding the wave of the data revolution, they're actively shaping it.
But as with any investment, there are risks involved, and understanding those risks is crucial.
Absolutely. The insights we've gleaned from these reports equip our listener to make more informed decisions and to critically evaluate the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead for Snowflake.
This deep dive has given us a real appreciation for the complexities of Snowflake's business. It's been fascinating to go beyond the surface and uncover, the inner workings of this data powerhouse.
And I think it highlights the importance of informed decision-making, whether you're an investor, a customer, or simply someone who's fascinated by, the transformative power of technology.
These reports are just the beginning. There's a world of information out there waiting to be explored and understood.
So keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, and keep challenging assumptions. That's the spirit of the deep dive.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of business and technology.